Hi, it's Andy, and I am back today to do a recent reads. It is basically a wrap up because I've not done a wrap up since June or July. So I have all the books here and I'm quickly going to go over them with the use of my trusty journal. Give you a quick summary and let you know what I thought of the books that I read basically from June or July till now. So we start off with Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. This was recommended to me by a co-worker. It is about a world, a dystopian world in which people are ranked by colour, so they can only see certain colours. So for example, our main character is a red, so he can see different shades of red, but no other colour. And there are people in the world called greys who can't see any colours, and they are seen as the lower classes. This basically, it feels like the start of a series. The fact that there's not a second book to this really disappoints me, and I kind of hope that there will be a sequel to this book because it left off really unfinished. It's more about our character learning that just because you're a certain colour doesn't mean you're actually better than anybody, and the greys actually have some advantages over them. This builds up to the start of a revolution, but we don't actually get to see the revolution happen, so hopefully one day we'll get a sequel. This book was published in 2011, so I'm not hopeful for a sequel. Overall I think I gave this 3 stars. Enjoyed it, but I could have done with more because it was a lot for a build up. But I think possibly on second reading I might like this. So the next book is a book I don't actually have a physical copy of right now, and that's One Punch Man Volume 1. I read this for a readathon. I can't remember which readathon I read it for. Possibly the Newts. I gave it 1 star. I just don't seem to be the person that can read mangas, comics, things like that. And I couldn't really tell what was going on. I am no further forward on what One Punch Man was about. So yeah, sorry to people who enjoy manga. It just appears to not be my genre. The next book I read was Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, and this book was a chunker, but it was very fast to get through because I already knew the story because I've read Twilight. It is basically what it sounds like. It is Twilight from Edward's point of view. I think I gave this 3 or 4 stars. I did enjoy it. It confirmed a lot of what I already thought about the character, and it was nice to get the other perspective because I love knowing what everybody's thinking. It is definitely something that I like. I know that a lot of people are like, okay, but it's the same story again, you could have done something different, but I like having that other perspective so that it's not just Bella's perspective. So yeah, I think she needs to stop now though, that's the only thing. And as I said in the last video, in my haul where I got this, I will leave links down below so that you can donate to the Quileute tribes, move to higher ground, because nobody from sort of Stephanie Meyer's camp, Twilight camp, is helping them, despite the fact that she has you know, used their culture without asking or speaking to any of them to see if she's getting anything right. So it'd just be nice if you are a Twilight fan, if you plan to buy this book, please donate to the Quileutes, move to higher land. And like I said, I'll put details in the description. The next book I read was The Story of Egypt by Joanne Fletcher. Joanne Fletcher is a historian who specialises in Egyptology, and she's just compiled this book, which briefly covers the history of Egypt from, you know, way back 4,000 years ago to not present day, but until Egypt as we know from sort of history stopped being Egypt. So basically it's the history, but not the modern history. And it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was really heavy. It is very small writing and a lot of heavy facts. Like I said, I did enjoy this. I think I give this 4 stars. And definitely up for learning more in the future. But yeah. The next book was a reread for me, and I reread Divergent by Veronica Roth. I don't know why, I was just really in the mood for Divergent. I think because people were speaking about it a lot. I just really wanted to reread it, so I did, and I pretty much enjoyed it as much as before. Probably a 4-star, good solid 4-star. I love the idea of divergence. If you haven't read this before or heard of Divergent, not entirely sure what you've been doing, because it was everywhere a few years ago. So in Divergent, the world has gone amok, and there is an area within, I think it might be Seattle, I'm not sure, I'm really bad with remembering where it's set, and they have broken into 5 different factions. You've got Dauntless, who are fearless, or dauntless, Abnegation, who are very selfless, Erudite, who value knowledge, Candor, who value candour or honesty, and Amity, who are kind of like the caretakers. They grow the crops and they're very one with nature, very zen. Yeah, and it's about Triss, who is a main character, and she discovers about the world of Divergents, who are people who fit into more than one of these groups, you know, like most people in the world. And basically the factions will destroy all the Divergent if they can. So Triss discovers she's Divergent. Not really a spoiler, she finds that out in the first few chapters of the book, and you know, things go from there. Next book I read was Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, and that means I've finally completed for the first time the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I've read The Hobbit multiple times, but I've slogged through the Lord of the Rings. It is really archaic language, really flowery language, and that's not really how I like my books. It's a very dense, high fantasy, and as I'm discovering, I really struggle with fantasy, especially fantasy to this degree. If there's a lot of world building, if there's a lot that is out with my experience, it does take me longer to get into it. Doesn't mean I'm going to give up with things like that, but it does mean that I tend to enjoy them less at the moment. So I think this got maybe 2 or 3 stars at most. Just the, you know, we all know Frodo throws the ring into the volcano. It's over. I still love the films, definitely love the films more than I love the books, but maybe one day I will reread these and enjoy it more. Next was one of my favourite books that I've read so far, and that is The Lost Book of the White by Cassandra Clare. As you can see, I've got the lovely turned around cover on it to match in with my copy of The Red Scrolls of Magic. And here we have Alec and Magnus on this. This is the second in the Eldest Curses books, which follow Magnus and Alec, kind of in the middle of the original 6 books in the Shadowhunter world. I love this. I love Magnus and Alec. I love Magnus more than any other character, I think, in the Shadowhunter world, so give me anything about him and I will read it, basically. Yeah, it also tells the story of how they got their kids, and I love it. I'm not going to spoil it because it does spoil things for the original 6. The next 2 reads were actually rereads from when I was younger, and that is Room 13 by Robert Swindells and The Twins by Caroline B. Cooney, and these are point horror books. I read these when I was young in high school. High school for us starts at 12-13, so this is pretty much the level of horror, thriller, mystery, anything like that that I can handle, so I really enjoyed rereading these. Room 13 is about a girl who goes to Whitby. Whitby is the inspiration behind Dracula, so of course in this there's a vampire, and you know, her and not her friends really, just other people in her class then have to save another classmate from the vampire in the hotel. Which is really interesting. It is a quick read, it's very short, it's a kid's book, so it's, you know, big writing, things like that. The Twins, again, is another horror. It's about a pair of twins who get separated, and then one comes to visit the other at boarding school, and they switch clothes, and the twin queen to visit dies, but everybody thinks they other twin dies. So Mary Lee and Madrigal are identical twins. Everybody thinks Mary Lee has died, but Madrigal has actually died, and Mary Lee decides that she is going to step into Madrigal's life because she thinks she had a better life than her, but then discovers that it's not what it seems, and that Madrigal may have known that she was going to die, or known that Mary Lee was going to die and switch places with her. So yeah, really interesting, really twisted, these books. So yeah, I enjoyed them. And I gave those books, I think, 3 or 4 stars as well. The next book I read was The Betrayal by Kate Furnivall. This is a World War II historical fiction set in Paris. I don't understand how I hadn't read this before, because it is very much similar to The Nightingale. It's not as good as The Nightingale. It's a 3 or 4 star again, probably more leaning towards the 4 star. We've got 2 sisters in Paris during World War II, and one whose husband works with the Nazis, and the other who is in the resistance groups. So kind of on either side of the fight for the 2 sisters, which complicates their relationship. This was much more interesting than I expected it to be, and the plot twist at the end really got me, so I definitely think it's well worth a read, especially if you like historical fiction and historical fiction about sisters. Next up is Into the Spotlight by Carrie Hope Fletcher. This is a retelling of Ballet Shoes, and it is endorsed by the author's estate. This is about 3 siblings who live in the Pebble Theatre, so they are known as the Pebble Children, just like before it was the Fossil Children, and they are on a mission to save their theatre. This is a fantastic middle grade. I am an adult and I loved it. The book naked is beautiful, with all the shells and pebbles and things. It's got a great message behind it, a family, friendship, and the ability to make a change in your world. So if you have kids, I definitely recommend you read this, even read this to them. I was lucky enough to get a signed copy. Yeah, I loved it. It was definitely 5 star for me. The next books that I read, again, is a reread, and that is the Discovery of Witches trilogy. So A Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night, and The Book of Life. I have this beautiful set that all matches in together. I love these books. I had seen that the 2nd season had been announced on Sky, and could not get the story out of my head, could not get the characters out of my head, so decided I wanted to read the book. So I reread all 3 books. Didn't take me very long, even though they look really chunky. They're really fast paced and really interesting, and I love them so much. 5 star, 5 star, 5 star all the way. Then I rewatched the 1st season, so yeah, I am so pumped for the next season coming out, hopefully in the new year. I may have cried a little when I found out, because I'm so excited to meet these characters. I think they've done a fantastic job transcribing it over onto the TV series. But these are about, this is our world where witches, vampires and demons exist, and it follows one of our main character, Diana, who is a witch but likes to reject her power, reject the fact that she's a witch, stay away from the witch community. Unfortunately, Destiny has a different plan for her, because she is the only one that can access the Book of Life. Not that she knows what it is. She recalls it one day in the library, and then the other creatures all start coming in to see if she can get it again and try and take it from her, because they all believe it is theirs to keep. So she is then supported and rescued, I suppose, by Matthew de Clermont, who is a vampire, and he is quite high ranked within the sort of structure of the world. The de Clermonts basically have a little pull, so he sits beside her in the library and stops other creatures from being able to hound her. They then fall in love. I love witches, very much Romeo and Juliet retelling there. The creatures are banned from having relationships with each other, even friendships, and Matthew's well known for breaking things like that, given his best friend's a demon. But Matthew's also a geneticist, so he is discovering that maybe the creatures and the humans are not as different as they think. So yeah, this trilogy just follows on from the start, and then the 2nd and 3rd just follow through that story. don't want to give anything away other than what I've said. So if you I saw this on if you like Outlander, you should read A Discovery of Witches. I love Outlander. I read A Discovery of Witches. I see why they said that and I absolutely adore it. Possibly more than Outlander, and that's saying something. After that, I then read Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. I unfortunately gave this a 1 star. It was far too short for what it was. I really wished it had more, and I probably won't be continuing the series because my least favourite characters were Jack and Jill, and the other books seem to follow Jack and Jill. So it's a good concept, a fantastic concept. I just found it didn't work for me. It starts off being a girl comes back from her world that she's gone to, ends up going to the house where we were children, and then it kind of goes off of her and onto a murder mystery. I'm not really a mystery reader, so I just didn't like it. And then the twist at the end that just did absolutely nothing for the story, in my opinion. I know other people love these books, and that is absolutely fantastic. I think there's definitely something in it for others. It's just not my type of thing. I need answers. I need things spelled out. I need things like Twilight where you don't have to think, but definitely Every Heart a Doorway is one where it made you think, and I don't really enjoy books like that, so unfortunately I only got a 1 star, but if the concept sounds interesting to you, then absolutely I would recommend it. Next book I read was one that I've been waiting for over a year, and that is Immortal Angel by Lindsay Sands. Lindsay Sands is by far one of my favourite authors. She is an auto-buy author. Every time she releases one of the AZebraReads books, it is on pre-order, and she releases one about every 6 months, except this time she skipped one and did it a year later, so that's why I've been waiting a year for this. This follows Eladria and Gigi. Gigi is a well-established character in the series. This is book 25 or 26, something like that, so there's only so much I can say about it. This is a set of paranormal romance books that follow primarily the AZebraReads family, who are a family of vampires, and the vampires are actually scientific, which I really like, and every one of these books is from a different character's perspective and how they find their life mate, which is the one person that they can truly be themselves with. That it's much better explained in the books, and I don't want to say a lot, but if you like good, fairly smutty paranormal romance that again you don't need to think about, these I would absolutely recommend. I will buy these until I can't get any more, and I will reread them and reread them and reread them because I love them so much. And if I haven't said and it wasn't obvious, 5 stars. Next book I read was Disfigured, on Fairy Tales, Disability and Making Space by Amanda Leduc. Now, at first I only gave this, I think, a 3 star, but given time away from it, I think I would up that to 4.5 star. This was looking at fairy tales and stories and how they use a lot of disabilities and things like that, disfigurements, to make a villain a villain. So it's kind of associating these bad traits with villains, and that sounds very much like you're pulling it out your butt, but really you should read this. It makes so much more sense. And there's actually been a controversy at the moment where the new version of The Witches by Roald Dahl actually has one of the characters, she has a deformation in her hands where she's missing 2 fingers or whatever combination it is, and that is, you know, the witches are well known to be these hideous creatures, and it is Anne Hathaway with a bald cap on and disfigured hands. Let's face it, Anne Hathaway is gorgeous, so the only thing that makes her terribly ugly is the deformation in her hand, which Megan from Wegan on YouTube has pointed out she's not happy with this. There are plenty of other people I've seen that are not happy with this, because if that is the marker of her being evil and horrible and disgusting, and you're aiming that at a children's audience, that's, someone's not thought that through. Someone has not thought that through. This follows Amanda in some ways as she grows up with her disability and sees how she's not represented, especially not as the princess or the hero, but there are things like Maleficent, who uses a cane all of the time, and how the evil queen in Snow White becomes an old lady with a hump and a stick, etc. It really goes into detail and it's really, really interesting. And how other things come from it. At first I wasn't overly keen on it because I did see it very much as, okay, that's one experience, it can't be like that completely, but the more I look into it, the more I realise how dodgy things are in media and how disabilities and race and things are used as a marker of a villain. Even it's nothing to do with the race or anything like that, I know, but things like, do you notice in American films that the villain's always British and they always have that British accent? Yeah, it's pretty stereotypical there. And I was thinking about it yesterday, and even Scar, you know, he is seen as being, you know, the scar is the only thing that names him. Before that he had another name which wasn't very nice either. But when you look at the illustrations for Disney, and I might be thinking too much into this, Scar is the only one of the prides that has a darker complexion, shall we say. Not saying it was done on purpose, but something maybe to have a look out for in media. And just bear in mind that what you put forward can set a stereotype for a group of people, and when it's aimed at children it can really affect that. But yeah, so definitely worth a read, and it is something that I think you do need to digest a bit. Next book I read was another of the point horrors, and this is The Girlfriend by R.L. Stine. R.L. Stine's quite a well-known children's horror writer. This is about a boy whose girlfriend goes on holiday and he ends up cheating on her while she's away, and the girl he cheats on her with is very, very unstable and starts to do things that are very, very not good. I mean, this is a horror book, she kills his pet, etc. You know, it's not good. Yeah, so this probably got a 2 or 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't that great. It's, again, horror is not my genre, and it was very much a bitches be crazy. So next up is The Enigma Game by Elizabeth Vine. I've read, in my last wrap up actually, you would have seen me read Codename Verity and Rose Under Fire, which are 2 World War II historical fictions that I absolutely loved, and this is the next one, which doesn't follow our characters from there. It follows new characters. You get Jamie, who is in the original 3 actually, if you count the Pearl Thief, and Louisa, who is a mixed race girl. She is half black Jamaican and half English, white English, from her mother's side, and this is during World War II, so there is some racism within the book of people judging her because of the colour of her skin, but it's not the forefront of the story. It definitely looks at how we treat people from other places, so in her case because she is black or appears black due to her mixed race, and there's also a German pilot in this who is judged based on the fact that he is German and nothing else, and the woman that Louisa ends up taking care of is German but married a Scot, so she has to hide the fact that she is German because otherwise she would be looked at as an enemy. She's actually at first on I think it's the Isle of Man or the Isle of Wight, I can't remember, it doesn't say, but she was in a prison because she was a German citizen, nothing else other than that. So and then Louisa goes to pick her up and take her to Scotland to her niece's home, and she looks after her there. So the next 3 books I read again were a trilogy, and that was the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. Crazy Rich Asians was put on to Amazon Prime, so I just had to watch the movie again, and it made me really want to read the books again. So similar to what happened with The Discovery of Witches, I love these books. These are all 4 or 5 star reads for me. Crazy Rich Asians is about Rachel and her boyfriend Nick, and Rachel agrees to go to Singapore with Nick for his friend's wedding, and then discovers that you know, the penny pinching professor that she thinks she knows actually comes from a family who are not just filthy rich but crazy rich, and she gets sort of delved into that world, and the consequences of, you know, his family discovering that he is dating a a nobody girl with no family that is rich and important, and how they overcome that. China Rich Girlfriend just follows on from that. You see more character from that, especially Kitty, and how she's dealing with being thrust in the society as well. And Rich People Poems, again, just carries on. I really do love all these books. If you like contemporaries that give you some information about the places, because Kevin Kwan is actually from Singapore, so you get little footnotes and interesting things about Singapore and Asia, Malaysia, China, etc. Absolutely fascinating, so interesting, and it is like, it's almost like gossiping with a friend. They're fantastic, I love them. The next book is Tower of Nero. This is the last in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, and the last in the Percyverse. I'm so upset about that. I love Percy Jackson books, and this was, yeah, pretty much just standard Uncle Rick. This is the conclusion, so I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but basically Apollo has been, he's made Zeus mad because of what happened in the series before, and he has been sent to Earth as a 16-year-old human called Lester, and he is no longer the beautiful god. He is, you know, a scrawny 16-year-old with acne, and then to make matters worse, he's put into servitude by a demigod named Meg, who herself is quite unusual, and he has to, you know, complete trials before he's allowed to ascend to Olympus. I thought there was going to be a correction made in this from the last book, where, if you know, you know. I understand where he's gone with this, and I understand what he's done with the character, and why he would be happier, and yada 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 la la. But I'm still not happy about it, and I wish he would have brought him back. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star again. I just love Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson universe. Yeah. The next book is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the follow-up to Children of Blood and Bone. Magic has returned to the world, and not everybody is happy about it, and not everybody is using it to help better the world. So this kind of thrusts you into almost like a civil war between the monarchy and the magi. I like these books, I really do. It is a good 3-4 star for me, 3.5 maybe. I love how intricately Tomi Adeyemi has made the world. However, again, like with Lord of the Rings, I find this very heavy on the world building, and I struggle with that. I think these are definitely books that I need to read more than once to get the benefit out of, because I struggle to keep up with who was who, and what relationship they had to everybody else, and that's just, for me, that's pretty common with mixed point of view books, even things like Shatter Me. I tend to forget who's who, except Juliet, and in this, unless it was Zelly, I wasn't sure what was going on. So I think I definitely need to reread these books to get more out of it. Definitely recommend them, they're so beautifully written. Tomi Adeyemi really has a way with her words, and I highly recommend them. But yeah, I think definitely on rereading we'll probably end up with a higher rating, but for now we're looking at maybe 3.5 because I was confused most of the way through, but that is absolutely a me thing and nothing to do with the book. And we're almost at the end, so the next book I read was Long Way Down, by Jason Reynolds, illustrated by Chris Priestley. This is told in verse, sometimes very short verse, and with these beautiful illustrations. This is about our main character Will, whose brother Sean has been shot, and it is primarily to do with things like gang violence. So Will believes that Sean was shot by a member of a gang whose territory Sean went into to get their mother her medication, because it was the only place that they could get her medication. And this follows Will as he decides he's going to get revenge for this and kill the man he feels and believes killed his brother. So when he gets into the lift in his building, each floor on each floor he is joined by someone who adds to the story and adds to this idea of the endless cycle of violence and revenge, and how, you know, that doesn't just affect him and how it will affect others. And it's so beautifully written. It was unbelievable. I can't even tell you. The format was fantastic. You got so much out of it from such small amounts of writing. I don't think writing this in prose would have done the same as it was written in verse. I absolutely, you know, I got through this in an hour, 2 hours tops, and I immediately wanted to reread it. It was incredible and made me think so much. I definitely recommend this for everybody. I think everybody should read this. And now we're into the last physical book I read, and that was The Maze Runner by James Dashner. Yes, I'm late to the game, very, very late to the game. Yes, I know. This was the first time I read this book. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. I put it off and put it off because I thought I wasn't going to enjoy it, and I did. It gave me, you know, Hunger Games, Divergent, all that vibes. It's not exactly the same, it's not quite as intense, but it was that dystopian young adult that I was looking for. So basically you have Thomas, who wakes up one day in a box and he has no memories apart from, you know, how to speak and what his name is, and he ends up in the Glade. So the Glade is the space at the centre of a maze where all these boys are kept. There's maybe 50 or so boys, and they live there. They have a forest, they have a farmland where they have animals and they grow their own food, etc, etc. But there's also the fact that it is in the centre of the maze, and there are creatures in the maze called grievers that will kill them. And every day they send out runners who run around the maze, trying to find a way out. And Thomas has this feeling that he needs to be a runner. He's supposed to be a runner. And when he does go into the maze, he discovers more about himself and more about the maze. And then one day a girl is brought into the group of boys, and that starts off the chaos. And yeah, it's such a good read. It's so, I don't think anybody can describe this effectively, but I definitely think people should read it. That for me was a good solid 4 stars. Definitely a solid 4 stars. Okay, so the last thing I read was actually an audiobook that I am reading as part of not a trilogy, but it's a 3-part audiobook that I have on Audible, and that is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm so sorry for people who love classics, but I ended up not liking it. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't, you know, I get the whole idea of Dr. Jekyll makes this potion that turns him into Dr. Hyde, or makes this chemical mixture that turns him into Dr. Hyde, and but I think the adaptations over the years have done more than the story did, because the story to me was very basic and very boring. I don't find that I get on very well with classics. I can manage maybe 2 Jane Austen books, 3 Jane Austen books at most, and then that's me. And I struggle to get through the Jane Austen books, and of course that's Pride and Prejudice, and Persuasion, and also Northanger Abbey I really liked. I'm not even sure that's actually a Jane Austen. I am so bad at the classics. But yeah, so that unfortunately was like a 2-star read for me. I didn't really like it. I am currently now listening to the second in this 3-part, which is Frankenstein. Again, so far I'm not having that much fun with it, but after that I'll be on to Dracula, so here's hoping that it gets better. Yeah. But yeah, so that is my recent reads wrap up for June, July until now. So hopefully I'll do these a bit more frequently. I hate the fact that most of my videos are really, really long. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of the books, tell me in the comments below. I would love to have a discussion about them and what you think of them. And you know, other people's perspectives of books are so much so important to the reading experience, because there are things that I will have missed, things that other people can see that will make me think, and then when I reread, have a look at that and probably enjoy it. Don't think I've said this before in any of my videos, but yeah, I would love it if you would subscribe. That would be really nice, because I would love to have a bigger community in this and be able to speak about books with people, because I love reading, I love discussing books, and I don't really have many people in my life that I can do that with, so having an online community is quite important to me, so that I can, you know, vent about books. But yeah, thank you to everybody who has newly subscribed, and thank you if you do subscribe. I think I'm supposed to tell you to give that thumbs up if you liked it, but I'm still a bit new to this. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye.